Hi, welcome to Tabletop Talks number 7, Going to a Tournament. So this is going to be really a little bit different to the other Tabletop Talks that I do, because I'm just going to be talking about literally going to a tournament. Just got back from one myself, Bounding Fire in Blackpool, which takes place every November. Had an absolutely fantastic time, caught a really awful cold, which is partly why I am recording this on the day that it's going out, and it's all a little bit of a rush. But I'm going to be talking about going to tournaments and saying why basically people should. I've got my new office here, as you can see in the background, and I've got some cards because I thought that's the easiest way to remember what it is that we're going to be talking about. So we're going to do a little introduction. We're going to be talking about where you can go to tournaments, what happens at tournaments. We're going to put the ladders, the Crusader ladders. We'll talk about those. Language. We're going to be talking about how much it costs, what to bring, and we're going to be talking about what feels to me sometimes like a bit of a brotherhood, really, the other ASLers, and how easy it is to kind of find yourself getting on really well with other people. So, to begin with, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because in Blackpool and at other tournaments all through my ASL career, I've met guys who've said to me, I was very, very reticent. I was very nervous about coming to a tournament. I put it off for years. And you meet people who say, they're nervous that they don't really know the rules well enough, and that maybe experienced players will get frustrated, playing somebody who's relatively new. Maybe their skill level's not very good, and they're going to go to a tournament that's going to be very, very competitive. And really, I think these are fears that people don't need to have. And that's what I wanted to, one of the things that I want to kind of sort of talk about. As we're working through here. So those are some of the reasons people don't go. Reasons why we should is because when you first go to a tournament, you learn such a lot. For every tournament you go to, you always learn a lot. It's a time of real intensity. You're playing, you're talking about it when you're not playing. You learn an awful lot. Whether maybe you play in a small group of people, it's very likely that you have little idiosyncratic rules errors in your little group of friends, and you go out into the broader sort of ocean of players. You'll find that you'll put people right, and that they'll put you right, perhaps. So your play will improve. You get to meet a whole range of fascinating, interesting people with a similar interest to you. And some of my best friends in the world are people that I met really from playing ASL and partly from sort of going to tournaments. So you should definitely go. So where? Okay, well, if you're in the UK, the place to look is View from the Trenches, the UK ASL magazine run by Pete Phillips. If you go to that website, very easy to find. I mean, I'll put it in the notes, but View from the Trenches, Google that, and you'll find it. There's all the magazine articles going back 20 years or more, incredible resource there. There'll be photographs of UK tournaments, but also there's up-to-date information about the 3 main British tournaments. Bounding Fire in November. Is it Heroes in March? There's another one in March in Blackpool, and there's double one in near Chelmsford. All that information is there, up to date. Globally, if you have a look at a website called advancedsquadleader.net, and again I'll put that into the notes at the bottom, but there you can find information about all the tournaments around the world. Now, there's no guarantee that they're all on there, of course, but it's a big list of tournaments all across the world. I know that the March one in the UK is actually missing from there, so I'm pretty certain it's not complete, but it's a very, very good place to start. And the thing to do is, once you've got an idea which what you want to go to, get onto their website, contact their tournament director, and let them know that you're interested in going. So when you go to a tournament, what happens? Well, typically they take place over a number of days. Typically they stay in a hotel. Very often only ASLers are able to, well, that was my mum coming. Typically only ASLers are able to book the hotel in that time. It's not perhaps true of all tournaments, but it's certainly true of the tournaments in the UK. So you know that there aren't going to be, I don't know, people coming back drunk late at night, kind of wanting to have a look at your stuff. Because there aren't people who are non-ASLers there, you're able to leave your stuff out overnight during the day, leave a game set up. People are very respectful, are not going to bump into your tables and things like that. And obviously there's gaming. A lot of the time it's going to be taken up with gaming, but not all of the time. Some of the time, if you like to have a drink and go and have a chat with some people, get to know people better, maybe go with a friend. If you've got an opponent you regularly play, but you're just playing each other, both go to the tournament, get to know a few other people. You'll have a lot of fun. The tournament itself, normally there are kind of three main aspects to it. The first is that there will be a main tournament, and this is like the big ticket item really at the tournament. Maybe there's 16 guys or 32 people going into a tournament, and there'll be some sort of a set of rules or a format, which means that you get to play a number of people, and eventually they decide who is the best player at the tournament. Essentially, that's the idea of it. Now, if you're very, very new to ASL, you may or may not want to go into that tournament. Newer players can enter the tournament. Don't expect perhaps to win it, but newer players are welcome to become involved in those tournaments. Or you may want to be picking up games in other respects. But the main tournament is there. It's a lot of fun playing it because it guarantees you 2-3 games a day. You don't have to go around trying say, do you fancy a game and all that kind of awkwardness. You're in a structured thing, and you'll meet a lot of different guys. Also, tournaments often have mini tournaments. So as well as the main tournament, there'll be perhaps smaller tournaments. Sometimes they've got a bit of a flavour to them, like the parachuters in one, or there'll be one in the Pacific Theatre, or it will just be the theme that there's a tiger tank in the scenarios or whatever. So mini tournaments, much lower status, a little bit more relaxed than being in the main tournament. Sometimes there are minis for the first couple of days, and then there's the main tournament. Sometimes they run at the same times, providing for what different people might want. But minis are good fun, a little bit more relaxed, a little bit lower stakes in terms of you're just having a friendly game really. All the games are friendly. And then there's pick-up games. So you can also not be involved in any of the organised structured events. You could just go there, and you might have been in contact with somebody in advance and you arrange a few games ahead of time, or you just turn up and find people at a loose end and offer to give them a game. Particularly if you're new, I think contact the tournament director and say you're coming to your first tournament, and they'll make sure that you get set up with somebody, give them an idea of what level you're at, and just go along. ASL players will be welcoming to new people. We're always, every year I go to tournaments, people talk about how there's no new guys coming in, there's no new people. It's we're all getting older, we're all getting grey beards, and we need new people. We're always welcome. Everybody's welcoming. You're gonna be very, very much welcome. One thing that sometimes does give people a bit of anxiety is ladders. In most countries, there is some sort of a ladder system whereby games get recorded and your wins and losses, and you get a score. Now, tournament directors like this because they're able to use it to seed people, basically decide who are the better players and who are the not such good players. One of the downsides of ladders is it sometimes puts people off, especially if you're quite new. You go to a tournament, you're not expecting to win any games, and you play a few and you lose them, and you all of a sudden you kind of got a relatively low score on this kind of sort of ladder of UK players or US players or wherever it is that you're playing. I think the big thing about ladders is just not to be too fussed about them at the beginning. They're not really that important. If you're playing outside of main tournaments, you don't have to have all of them recorded as a part of the score. If you are concerned about it, have a chat with your tournament director before you go along, and I'm sure that you'll get a sensitive response. Language. English is pretty much the lingua franca of ASL. The rule book is in English. I think it's been translated into Italian. I'm sure I've seen an Italian version of it. But I'm not sure about that. Let me know if I'm wrong. But because people need to be really proficient speakers of English in order to be able to understand that very complex book, most tournaments that you go to around the world, people will be speaking in English. Certainly England, UK, USA, Canada, Australia, places like that, obviously largely English-speaking places. But if you go to Scandinavia, I hope I'm not being too stereotypical here, but I have been there, and it is ridiculous how comfortable most Scandinavians are speaking English. They speak perfect English. People who are playing ASL, going to be intelligent people with quite good language skills, because the rule book, you're not going to have any trouble, I suspect. Correct me if I'm wrong. In most Scandinavian tournaments, if you turn up as an English speaker, places like Italy, France, Germany, I don't know, is the honest answer. I think if you're going as an English speaker, and you're probably an English speaker if you're listening to this, if you're going to a tournament in a country where English isn't the main language, then I suppose contact tournament directors. Maybe they can set you up with games. I think there's a very good chance they'll have no difficulty in setting up with people who speak English. If you are coming to the English-speaking countries for a tournament, you're going to have to be able to speak English, because in the UK, people's language skills are not great. There's no point in turning up in Blackpool hoping to play speaking Italian, but I guess you already know that. Okay. So cost, obviously, it varies tremendously. And in fact, I've been to tournaments that really have cost me a couple of £100, and I've been to tournaments that cost me £500-600. And I think that it's something you want to just do a little bit of calculating about if it matters to you. So the things to think about, obviously, just think about transport. If you're flying, driving, can you catch a bus or a train, get a lift from somebody, sharing with somebody else perhaps? Hotels, typically there's a fee per night, often includes breakfast, but then you want to think about lunch, you want to think about this, you want to be able to add these kinds of things in. Are you going to be spending a bit of money at the bar? If it's something that's a concern, I would do a little tot up in your head or on a piece of paper, just kind of get an idea of how much it's going to cost. Obviously, it's going to vary tournament to tournament, different parts of the world, but I've been taken aback when I've got home and realised how much I've spent, and at other tournaments it seems to be quite a modest amount. The other thing is you'll be tempted to buy stuff. There'll probably be somebody there selling ASL stuff, and you go, I haven't got this, I haven't got that. So it can become expensive. Just check it out. Just think it through before you go. There's always things you can do to keep costs down. Just think it through before you go. So what to bring? So the ideal, I guess, is that everyone brings the full kit, and by that, really, I mean, all the main nationalities that are published by Multiman Publishing. So you need obviously the Germans, the Russians. You'd need the Italians, the French. If you're into it, you need into the PTO. You need the Chinese, the Japanese. Obviously, I'm missing out the Americans. The Americans, of course, you need. But if you've got all of the main nationalities, you've got all of the main geo boards, you're going to be good to, and perhaps some of the overlays, you're going to be good to play the majority of the scenarios that are going to be available at a tournament, and you've got a very, very big range of games that you can play. So that's the ideal. If I arrive early at a tournament, because I got my boot kind of full of stuff, I'll take it through and I'll kind of like put it around near a table and kind of staking that out as mine. But sometimes I'm playing on somebody else's table and somebody else is using mine, but that's where my stuff is, and that works fine. When I arrive a bit later to a tournament, perhaps a couple of days in, everybody's already kind of taken up all the space. I just walk in and I go, like, who am I playing? And I go and I sit and I use this, and we just play with their stuff. It's just easier. So I've been to several tournaments. I've got a whole load of stuff in the boot of the car. I haven't had to get it out. So that kind of just depends. But the ideal is that you got all of the stuff. So if somebody's going to play with your stuff, you've got the boards to hand, you've got the counters, you're good to go. If you haven't got the full kit, or you don't want to take the full kit, or it's impractical, for example, if you're flying, then there probably is something like a minimum kit. So you need to have a rule book, and you need to have the charts. So you need to be able to look up the effects of your attacks and things like that, and you need to be able to do that yourself. So you need to have your own charts and rule book. The other thing is, I think it kind of gets a little bit irritating if you've got somebody with you, because you're inevitably going to have to, you can inevitably disagree about a rule, or you're not going to be both of you are not sure about how a rule is applied. You're going to want to look it up. If you feel like you're the only one looking it up, that gets a little bit annoying. You've got to have a rule book, so that's a minimum. Also on that minimum list is some decent dice and a means of rolling them, which your opponent can see. Some people do not like sharing dice. I'm really not precious about it, but some people are. So you need to have your own method. The most common with ASL players is a dice tower. You can look online, you can find them, they're not that expensive, but you want one which is low enough, the little tray where the dice get caught is low enough that your opponent can see your dice without having to lean over like that. There's nothing more annoying in a long game than constantly having to lean over to see what your opponent's dice is, and or waiting for them to tell you. It's nice to be able to see them. And if you forget what it is, you just look back and you can see, did he read a fire? Oh yeah, he did. You don't have to ask him again what his dice were. So make sure your dice can be seen after they've been thrown. Instead of a dice tower, some people, thinking about a guy in the UK seeing, a guy called Ian, he's got like a Tupperware drinking vessel with a lid. He's got the dice in there. He shakes it, puts it down, and you can see very clearly, you can see the two dice, the coloured one and the white one. Anything like that works. Probably what won't be particularly appropriate is kind of this thing where you kind of roll the dice in your hand and then you kind of roll them carefully on a bit of a map where there's no units. That's not the way people tend to do it at these things. Find a better method, okay? So in addition to that, so we've got the rules, we've got the charts, we've got dice, and I think ideally, if you can, take the system counters as well. So you've got the prep fire counters, the first fire counters. Now what you don't want to be doing is mixing the counters up with another person. But if you've got all of those things, what it means is I can maybe borrow somebody's Germans, and I can borrow somebody's Russians, because chances are there'll be two people playing each other, and they're they're playing different national. They both got the Germans, they both got the Russians with them. Okay, so you got to know a few people. The tournament director will organise it for you. You just borrow somebody's Russians, somebody's Germans, and you can play a game because you've got your system counters. So that kind of just works out at tournaments. And like the Brotherhood, okay, it's a little bit of a emotive word to call it a Brotherhood, but it does feel like that sometimes to me. I've never really met an ASL player who I didn't really get on with. People are very, very welcoming. You've got something quite significant in common. Always interesting to talk to. I think the players are great. There's this kind of honour code in the game, isn't there? And that goes through the players as well. I kind of find myself being very trusting with ASL players. I've never had any problems. I mean, interestingly, in the game, I talked to somebody about this just the other day at a tournament. In all the years I've been playing Advanced Squad Leader, and I've been writing down my hips, not a single person has ever asked to see my notes, nor have I ever asked to see anybody else's. There's this kind of absolutely accepted kind of honour code among ASL players. So they're honest, they'll be welcoming, for the most part, they'll be friendly. I can't speak for everybody, of course. I can only talk about my own UK experience, but I've met lots of Americans, I've met a few Australians, I've met lots of Scandinavians, some of these people virtually, just very, very friendly. Occasionally you see some little flame wars on Game Squad or something like that. It isn't like that when you all meet up face to face. There's none of that kind of awkwardness or unpleasantness. The other thing I would say is, it's a pretty tolerant group. I mean, I certainly know people from both extremes of the kind of political spectrum who play Advanced Squad Leader, from extreme I don't know, kind of extreme left to extreme right wing, extreme maybe not extreme, but substantially on either side of that line, and people pretty much just get on. There's no real issues. People don't talk a great deal about politics, but it crops up, and there don't seem to be any problems with the way people talk about it. And in other regards, people are very tolerant too. I can't imagine, and inclusive. I can't really imagine somebody who could arrive at a tournament that would feel any awkwardness or difficulty whatsoever. Certainly in the UK, anyway. So the final thing that I just wanted to say really is go to tournaments. Just have a fantastic time. Get to know lots of people in a kind of way. I think it changed my life actually. Just getting to know so many people and taking the hobby to that kind of like sort of next level. I think people, if you can afford to, and you can get away, because obviously people have got commitments. For years and years, I could only go weekends, and tournaments in the UK normally start on Wednesdays. I missed out on the beginning part of it because I was a teacher. So bearing all of those things in mind, if you can, get yourself to a tournament, improve your play, get to meet a lot of brilliant people, and just have a fantastic time. If you're new and you've been to a tournament, put a comment, tell us what it was like, tell us what your experience was like, good or bad, okay? If you're a little bit more experienced, maybe you've been to a few, put some comments at the bottom telling other people the things that I haven't covered that you think I should have done, all right? Thanks very much. Bye-bye.